Hello and welcome back to Zapped to the Past and our look at the games that were reviewed in issue 6 of Zap 64. I am Adrian Mills and I am joined as always by Graham Raddings. Last week we looked at our first batch of games from this issue and were sonically impressed with Monty on the Run, bored by the less than super Zaxxon, and bewildered by the mix of genre horror in Vortron. If you haven't listened to it, then go and do so. If you have, then let's get on with things. Graham, what do we have to look forward to in this part?
In this feast of an episode, we stuff our faces with a main of Baron McGuigan's boxing, gulp down some arcade sound canapes with Raskel, choke on the angularly challenged Cylu side dish, and develop severe stomachache with out-of-date Vagan Attack dessert and its Ghostchaser topping. On top of that, we take a cycling tour of French bus stops, get bored of more island capers, and debate the merits of spider collecting diamonds. You might want to give that a courtesy flush.
Great. I do just want to bring up one thing, and for people who have read this issue of Zap, they may be wondering if we were going to be covering a couple of sizzlers that did appear in this issue, and they are Racing Destruction Set, I think it is, and Pinball Construction Kit. We've made a decision not to cover them because essentially they're kind of game creation engines type things and not really games in and of themselves. And obviously the enjoyment from them comes from what you create. And so me and Graham sat here chatting about how we put a track down and how we put pinball tables together. Probably wouldn't be the most interesting thing. So we've decided, we are going to look at ready-made games. And that's why they're not featured in this issue, or this episode of Zap to the Past. Sorry if you're expecting them, but we're not going to talk about them because they're just not really within our remit of what we want to do. Okay. Anyway, let's move on. Our first game in this part is a boxing game, Baron McGuigan's World Championship Boxing. Now, I have very, very, very fond memories of this game. I played this a lot. As soon as that music came on, I was straight back. Even before this game loaded up, sort of thing, my brain twigged in, and I was going, dude, it was happening because I played so much of it, and it was just a catchy little tune. So, Baron McGuigan, it's a boxing game. It's a side-on boxing game, so it's not your punch-out viewpoint. It's not your Frank Bruno's boxing viewpoint from behind the boxer. This is a side-on, away the exploding fist viewpoint, boxing game. So you have two fighters in a ring moving left to right, and they're punching each other. Profile, thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. That's what it is. And okay, it's a boxing game, but there's quite a bit more to this. So we talked about, was it Knockout from Alligator a few episodes back, and we really didn't like that sort of thing because, well, it was bloody awful. That's why. This, on the other hand, I still think is a really pretty decent boxing game. There's a lot to like here, and there's a lot going for it. So there's a lot more to this as well. In that, essentially, this is like a career game. You start off as you design your own boxer. There's some nice ability to design your own boxer. You can be both black or white sort of thing. Although I did find it weird that if you were to be a black boxer, you had no choice but to have black hair and black shorts, which was kind of a bit weird choice. Whereas if you were a white boxer, you could have all kinds of coloured hair and all kinds of coloured shorts. So that was a bit odd looking back at it now sort of thing, but at least there was the option, which I think is for 1985 quite an interesting and quite a positive thing to see. You could set your attributes, so you could be a slugger or a bruiser or a dancer, what type of boxer you wanted to be. I was never quite sure if that had some kind of impact, but I think it did somewhere in the back end of this. And so then you went on to a career. Now you could choose to start at the bottom of the rankings. There was 20 boxes above you, or 19 boxes above you, so 20 boxes in total, including yourself. Top of which is Barry McGuigan himself. Or you could choose to start in the middle at 10 sort of thing. So if you were pretty decent at the game already, you could just jump in and get going. And then you picked a fight, so you could fight either of the two boxers that were above you in the ranking, so 18 or 19 if you started at number 20, or obviously at this point there's no one below you, so that you would choose one of those. You would then get a number of weeks to do some training. You would get to see how your boxer stats, where you were weak or where you were strong. You would see your opponent where they were weak and where they were strong, and you could do some training, and you could assign weeks to different training. So you had light bag, heavy bag, weight, running, and another one I can't quite remember off the top of my head. And each of these would affect your stats in different ways. How many weeks you put into them would affect your stats going into the game. And so when you got into the fight itself, you had endurance, you had strength, and there's another one sort of thing. But and essentially, the more you punched, the more your endurance would go down. The more you got punched, you would lose strength, and so this was you had to carefully manage your attacks when you wanted to punch, you don't control the movement left and right in the actual fight. The game does it automatically for you, and depending on kind of how well you're doing, would move it to the left or to the right in the ring. There's quite a nice options with actual boxing moves you can do. So if the boxers are quite close up, you hold down the fire button, and that does close punches. So you can do uppercuts or side, roundhouses, or punching to the hook sort of thing. You can do jabs, you can do all that. If they're a bit further away, you take your finger off the fire button and does longer punches, body blows, and you can put your gloves up, you can defend, you can leave them down around your waist to defend. And it really does become quite a skillful blend of luring your opponent in and wearing them down. These fights go on for some time, and I enjoyed my time with it. My boxing career, I didn't go through the full boxing career. It takes a while to go through a full boxing career, something I had in my youth. I wasn't able to do that now, sort of thing. But my boxing career saw me taking down, I took down Cannonball Corby and John Kid Cutter, which was quite good. I took them out, but then unfortunately, Boom Boom Barnett was my Waterloo, and so that was that's it. It's a solid boxing. This got 90.1%. It was a sizzler, and deservedly so. I still think this stands up today. I enjoyed my time with it. I don't know. What did you think, Graham?
Yeah, same. It's a nice tactical boxing game, this. It's not a game where you can just go and slug it out because you'll just run out of endurance and you'll just get beaten down repeatedly. So you've got to plan and think about things in this game, which really sets it apart, which actually makes it into a boxing game. Because if it was just an Activision boxing where you went in the ring and just slug, punch, ding, 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 and it was like that, it would very quickly become dull. You have to play the tactics here, so you've got to train in the right way for the right kind of thing. You have to look at the stats of the fighters that you're going to fight. And it's a tactical boxing game, and the fun of this game comes in trying to get your boxer further up those rankings. So it's a lot cleverer than I gave it credit for when now I came to replay it. I liked it originally, don't get me wrong. I remember playing it like you. I just played for hours because it just the boxing seemed to be quite good. It's got good graphics. They're not going to blow anyone away.
It's got a good single-player campaign.
Good. Yeah, it's a good single-player campaign. You've got a goal. You can train the boxer in the way you want. You can design your boxer. As like you say, you have more options, weirdly, than in some instances than others. But the sounds are good. The music's quite good. It's rewarding, and you're rewarded in this game because if you do take your time and think tactically and block at the right times and don't just go trying to beat the other guy to death in the first round, and do think about the longer game in this, you're going to get higher up those rankings to the point when you can actually take on Baron McGuigan himself, which is the kind of the purpose of it. And I think it's really good. I think it's probably one of the best boxing games on the Commodore 64 because it doesn't go down the whole stereotypical Super Punch-Out type route with Slugger McGee and all the rest. I'm not going to say the stupid real names that are in that game, but you get the idea. That it's not that kind of thing. And for me, it was a step above. It was a proper boxing game. It actually felt like you were training a boxer in there as well as sort of doing all of that. I really liked it, and I still do.
To me, it's like in those sort of early sort of rounds, like I said, you're fighting Cannonball Corby, John Kid Cutter, Boom Boom Barnett. It's kind of joke names, but there was like echoes, and obviously not fully sort of thing, but echoes of like the start of Rocky, the film. That sort of when he's in the opening fight in Rocky, when it's in that sort of small ring and there's not many people around, and you're low down and you're just fighting locally and that kind of thing. It feels like that. It feels like a journey towards getting to it. Because Baron McGuigan, let's not forget, Baron McGuigan was a big deal in the 80s. He was a big British boxer. Yes. Was he middleweight? I think it was middleweight.
World champion, wasn't he?
Featherweight, flyweight. I can't remember what he was, but he was world champion.
He was, I'm not sure.
Was it lightweight? I can't remember.
Might be. I will find out.
Find out. So he was a big deal sort of thing. So fighting your way to get to Baron McGuigan felt like a tactical adventure rather than a punch, dodge, punch. This was like you had to think about, where do I put I've got 12 weeks of training. Where do I need to strengthen myself? Where do I need to put something energy in for the person that I'm about to fight? Where can I outmatch them? It says he's got really strong endurance. Okay, so I need to put some, into road work. I need to go out on the road a lot to get my endurance up to match him in that. And there was a really good feel to it. And the graphics are nice. The boxes look good. It's a really solid boxing game. And I think you're right. It's it stands out. There's not much like this. Most of them went down a really sort of a bit more arcadey, bit more sort of went down the punch out route. And this did its own thing. And I think it made a good choice in actually playing to the strength of the platform, which was like you're going to be sat at home playing this for quite a while rather than just be shoving 10p on a console. And it's really good. It is really good, and still to this day is really good.
I agree completely. He was a featherweight WBA featherweight champion, world champion.
Featherweight, that's it. Yeah, so
very successful boxer and quite a overall successful guy. Still is a boxing promoter. boxer as well as many other things, just so you know. But he was very popular with Irish, because he was from Ireland, obviously, but he was very popular in both sides, in Ireland and in Britain. He's a very popular boxer. So
it was an Activision game, wasn't it?
Yes, I think it was actually. Yeah. So no, it's what can you say? There isn't a great deal of pickings when it comes to boxing games on the Commodore 64. So when they do come out, this one was a really good one, and I think it would have taken a lot. I don't know of any off the top of my head that actually certainly played any more than this in terms of boxing games. It's certainly better than the other really awful one we played by miles. So
Knockout, yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah, so it's much better than that, and the viewpoint for this game, I quite like that profile boxing. It's got the controls in it are good. It's a good game all in all, and like I say, this is it's a tactical game as well as a boxing game. It feels like a boxing game, not just a punch out, and I think that's what makes it a lot better.
Yeah, it's like it's kind of
for me anyway.
Like I said, it's got a low key feel to it. It doesn't try and like over the top and a sort of thing. It just feels like a down to earth boxing game. Like you're going in grubby. They feel a bit grubby and punching each other and trying to sort of outlast. And it's that thing about trying to outlast, which so many of these sort of fights sort of fall down into. And whereas in other games it feels like when you can land a big punch, and this doesn't feel like that. Yeah, so good. We like Baron McGuigan's World Championship Boxing. It certainly deserves that Sizzler rating. So yeah, go play it. Good stuff. Up next is a cheap game, $2.99. I don't mean cheap in that way. It's £2.99. It's a budget game. So our next game is Raskel, Raskel. Raskel. Graham, do you want to have at this one? What did you think? What was your take on this?
Now, this got a very strong review in the magazine. So this got 80%, something like that. I didn't.
Yeah, it did.
I personally didn't think it was that good. It's an attempt at a Defender type game, essentially. So it's got kind of the Defender style spaceship Defender kind of mechanics, more Defendery styling than Drop Zone did. However, it's blockier and less fun and a bit weird. So I would rather have played Drop Zone if I'm going to do that. It's got some nice sounds and graphics. The graphics are okay. The sounds are quite arcade. It's got an arcade feel, but it just lacks a bit of polish and a bit of it's a bit like luster, and there's not a lot of enemies in it. So you feel a little bit. It just feels that there's not as much fun in this as there would be if you played Drop Zone. So it's colourful, but it just ain't Defender. It just kind of wants to be, and it ain't quite there. There's not enough enemies. It's not quite fast enough. It doesn't quite have the pace, and it's not as much fun as Drop Zone. So that was my take on it. How it got 80%, I don't know.
Yeah, I think maybe the price played into that sort of thing.
It is cheap. I give it that. It is cheap.
It is $2.99. I put like it's a Defender knockoff. It's okay. The thing what I did really like was I thought it had, and I think you mentioned it, sort of thing. It's got really good sound effects.
Yeah. So the sound's great. Really good arcade sound.
Really powerful. Like lots of like bloops and whoops, and it's like this sounds great. Looks pretty rough though. And my problem with it was it had kind of indistinct controls. Yeah. But it's got indistinct controls and wobbly bullets. Yeah. Like in Defender sort of thing, you fire that big laser. What's going on. In this, it's like I don't know if I'm shooting or I'm not, and there's not stuff wobbling around and. It's not what's needed. Defender needs to be precise. Yes. It's got to be spot on. Otherwise, and Drop Zone is spot on. We said this in our review of it.
Yeah,
it's precise controls. This simply is not.
And Drop Zone doesn't do that kind of reversey zoom across the screen thing that this tries and fails at, which Defender does do, which is fine in arcade. But we said you don't need that in this kind of game, and here it's not done very well. So. Just makes it feel like it's more awkward to control than it should be. Yeah. I could see, if you bought this for £3, you'd probably get some enjoyment out of it. But going back to now, go play Drop Zone. Not to knock Rascal, it's not a bad game. It's just up against stiffer competition. When you've got access to all of these sort of things, and I think that it's nice to listen to. That's the great thing. That's the only good thing really about it. I really like how it sounded. It's really nice sound effects, but I can't really say much more about it than that. Yeah. No. There we go. So that's Rascal. We've got another budget title up next. It was Battle of the Budgets, wasn't it?
Battle of the Budgets, yes. Actually, all three of these are budget titles in this section.
Is not Battle of the Budgets, because that would be Jeff Capes would win, because one thing you don't know about Jeff Capes is that he bred super budgies, but that's a conversation for another time. It's a true fact. He did. He bred super budgies. Budgies that were bigger than your regular budgies. He fed them other budgies. That's a true fact. You can look that up. Someone said to him, how are your budgies so big, Jeff? And he said, no word of a lie, I feed them other budgies. That makes them stronger and bigger. So there you go. Just as an aside. Anyway, you were saying.
Next week's on Jeff Cape's facts you never never knew you wanted to know.
Next week we'll talk about Jeff Cape's other big animals.
But before that, let's talk about Cylu. I presume you pronounce it Cylu. I don't know, Cylu. Cylu. Like Cylon, I guess. So this is a £2.50 title. Okay, so what do we say about Cylu? You know those games. You know those games by Ultimate on the Spectrum. You know those games, those isometric adventures, your Night Laws and your things like that, and your what were the other ones, sort of thing? Batman was another one, and there was loads of them, Head Over Heels, and all these kind of isometric games that people liked and stuff like that. So Cylu, strangely enough, and to be fair, the C64 doesn't have a lot of these. It didn't have a lot of these kind of isometric sort of flick screen collectathons. It didn't have a lot. So Cylu is interesting, and it's £2.50. It's an isometric ultimate style adventure, but it has angles that hurt the brain because from an isometric point of view, everything should be you either essentially it's a square. So if you push up, it should go up in a certain direction. Everything should be 90 degrees from each other. Cylu doesn't do that. Cylu has push up and you go perhaps about 75 degrees from pushing left and about 115 degrees from pushing right, which at this point sort of thing I couldn't work it out. So when you push up to go further, it's all over the place and it started to really hurt my head. I wandered around for a bit because it's one of them. You've got to find stuff and collect stuff and solve puzzles. So I wandered around a bit and I died really quickly because I ran out of fuel. I ran out of fuel because I kept walking into stuff because I couldn't work out the perspective. So I couldn't get round things. Which made me walk into stuff, which made obviously held me up. And I didn't know what fuel I was supposed to be collecting. I didn't really know what I was supposed to be doing. It just looks like a Spectrum game with angles that hurt my head. My review says angles that hurt my head about 4 times, what I've written down here. And I put the title screen is horrible. So when this boots up, there's too much text and flashing colours. We mentioned this in Finders Keepers, whereas they had a penchant for running colours through letters or through things for that kind of cyclic effect. And this title screen, which has only normal size font, just has loads of them. And I was like, looking at it was just if you suffer from any kind of epilepsy, don't look at this title screen, for God's sake. For a couple of quid, there's probably quite a lot of game here and stuff like that, but it just hurt my head. I couldn't get into it. I couldn't handle it. I don't know. There just seems to be a lot here, sort of thing, but without any kind of quality control on it or anybody looking at it to decide that this probably needs some more work and sort them angles out.
Yeah, quite agree. I agree with everything you said. Its angular issues are one thing, for sure. So you've got to wander around this maze with the inability to walk in direct straight lines anyway, which is always problematic in an isometric world. You have to collect these 24 objects that have been hidden, bring them back and teleport around and all the usual kind of stuff you'd expect in this, but it's all monocolor type thing. It's not very attractive to look at. This play area is quite small and scrunched up, and there's weird kind of object holding and moving and picking up and dropping, and just tedious. I got, from the minute I saw that loading, that first screen, I was like, you know what, there's a lot of high res on that. I thought this is going to be one of those games that's done in a super high res, which means it's going to either be really slow or there's not going to be much moving around, or both. And I was, presented with exactly what I expected. So, there's no interest for me in this. There's loads of games like this, and they're always better on other platforms. And so when it comes to the Commodore 64, thankfully there's not, like you said at the start, there's not that many of these. And that's a good thing, because when there are too many of these, they just become rubbish, like this one is. No, thank you. I didn't play it for ages. I played it for long enough to get the gist. I couldn't quite get where I wanted to be. The controls were just stupid. And in the end, I got so frustrated with it. I was like, there's a reason why I don't play these isometric games, and this Cylu is the reason. I'm not sure why it's what you are. Apparently, that's your name. You are Cylu the Warrior King. Sorry, in the land of Evil. So that's EVOL, by the way. Anyway, I didn't persevere in the land of Evil, and I left the people leaderless because I couldn't be bothered to stagger around aiming to the right when I was actually kind of veering off to the left all the time. And in the end, I hate rotational control. Stop doing that. If I'm isometric, up, down, left and right just needs to do that. Not necessarily up, but obviously in that direction. I don't need to go click, 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 right. I need to turn 270 degrees to this. It's just no fun doing that. I don't need that kind of control pressure. Just, there's a joystick that's got 8 directions on it. It's not how to make it go in 8 directions then, really. At push 4. But what I don't need is to have to sort of rotate it to the angle, push it forward a bit. And, weirdly, it felt a bit like watching somebody trying to control somebody. Do you remember that TV show, Nightmare, where the kid would put on a blind helmet and the people would be guiding him, going, walk 6 paces forward, and he'd always walk slightly off to the left. And you're like, no, take a micro step to your right, turn 15, and it was like that. You're like forever thinking, you need to meet, you're not going quite straight, mate. Forget it, Cylu, you stupid idiot. You're no king. Get away.
And then you run out of fuel.
Go back to your non-warrior king lifestyle, Cylu, if that's your real name.
Yep. Yeah.
So goodbye, Cylu. Never come back again.
No, yeah, it's yeah. The C64 is not the home to the isometric flick screen adventure, is it?
No.
And this is the reason why. There you go. I'd never played this before. I'd never even heard of it. Had you heard of it before?
No, it hadn't come across my path.
No,
I wish it hadn't.
Yeah, there's probably good cause for that in it. I mean, if it's a good game, we'll have probably heard or played of it. But, but this is not one of them. So, Cylu, so long. So long,
Cylu. And, of course, remember, it was another classic Firebird release, and we've already spoken about their QA processes. It's thrown into a room with a hamster, and the hamster goes in the wheel, and they all scribble furiously. When in the wheel, that means release it at 2.8. It's a great game.
That's how QA, they review it. That's it. Say what QA processes?
Yeah, that's how they do it at Firebird. It's the hamster test. Does the hamster go in the wheel? Oh, don't release it yet.
They give it to the Firebird. They have a room with a Firebird in it, and if the Firebird doesn't eat it, then it gets released. That's what happens. If it doesn't feed on smaller Firebirds, which is how you beat Jeff Capes.
It's a classic company that had a great logo, but not a lot of great product.
No, terrible. There we go. Let's move on. All right, so what's our last game? In this section, Graham, over to you on this one. The curiously titled Vagan Attack.
Right, and we're back to that short straw thing again.
This is, admittedly, the shortest of the straws.
So,
but I don't know that before we review them. I
initially read it as Vagan Attack, and I thought, this could have some merit. I'm not sure what that would even look like. Vegans weren't around in the 80s, as far as I remember it. But anyway.
No.
Well,
vegetarians were, but it was just that one.
Yeah, anyway, it's Vagan Attack. The Vagans are attacking. And so it's, it's, for want of a better description, some kind of Star Trek-like battle grid graphics, so like a graphic depiction of a space battle scene with dots and representation of spaceships, a bit like I imagine how you would draw it's like almost like a paper-based game where you would draw, a bit like Battleships, where you draw a grid-based sort of thing and you'd put your spaceships and your whatevers on it, and then you command your vessel, for want of a better description, with text commands. So you type in these text commands, and I had to go and Google this game to find the text commands. If you're really that interested in Vagan Attack, go do what I did and do that. And then you can put the text commands in. It pretty much, not many of them seem to work in the way I expected it to. I wasn't sure really what I was meant to be doing. I think I was meant to be trying to battle things. I couldn't quite get to a battle. So there was lots of reading. It seemed to be stuff to read more than do in this game. And I've got so fed up with that. I'm like, what are you? What is this game about? What am I looking at? What am I doing? So it kind of had, all I can say is a basic Star Trek vibe. And I'm only saying Star Trek because this main spaceship that on the grid, the battle screen, such as it was a tiny little spaceship that looked a bit like the Starship Enterprise. So it had like a big disc and a stick. So I thought maybe that's what this is about. That's as far as I got into it. I lasted about 5 seconds after trying the different commands, trying to get it to do something. It was so basic and it just bombarded me with loads of stuff to read. And I'm like, this is not an attack of anything other than my patience. I thought, no, you know what? We're getting towards the end of 1985 now. Monty on the Run. I've played Monty on the Run already, and I've played Barry McGuigan's Boxing. I'm no longer wasting my time with these crappy, bloody rubbish games. Again, I had a feeling it was written in BASIC. Could be wrong, but it had that kind of vibe about it, and I'm thinking there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. because it takes, real skill to be able to cram all that into basic. But you know what? Just play it on your own. Don't release it to the rest of the world. Keep it to yourself. Admire yourself in a mirror every day and go, you know what? Vagan Attack is great. Just don't ever torture me with it. Did you get anything? Yeah. Did you get anything out of this game other than a frustrating level of eye strain from that green?
No, I mean, this is a genre of game. I mean, I quickly sort of read the review in Zap, and it's a Trek. They call it a Trekkie game. This was very popular back on like the Pets and things like Commodore Pet, old sort of PCs, and yeah, I looked at the controls as you did, sort of thing, because I got bored, sort of thing, with typing move, look, shoot, and nothing happening.
Yeah.
And then when I looked up, it was like, two-letter command. I was like, all right, okay. So I started again, and I did actually get myself moving, although it was weird how you could move across the grid, and I did blow a few things up. But it's just a paper-based board game, isn't it? It's just a grid that you could play with some tiles on a bit of paper.
Yeah.
I'm going to move my ship 3 paces this way. Oh, something's come on. I'm going to shoot that. It's a tabletop, sort of battle game, war game thing done in basic visuals. There's little much to be said about this. You might really like these kind of weird strategy game sort of thing, but it got 19% in Zap. Even they, I think, were just so bored of this kind of thing to be releasing this in the end of 1985. And as you said, sort of thing, not even that sort of thing. We've just played summer games too. We've just played. We played Pit Stop 2. We played Way of the Exploding Fist. This isn't a case of this is all right. It's all about the playability, mate. Because it ain't got any. No, it's a very, 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 very big no. No, just this shouldn't happen. What is to be said about this? It is the most basic of genres, released in a time when this thing shouldn't be happening.
No, exactly. And it borrows so much from so many great sci-fi shows and just throws them into this nightmare. Mm-hmm. So you've got Stardates, you've got Quadrants, you've got Plasma Bolts, you've got little spaceships look like Starship Enterprise-ish. You've got little TIE Fighter-y things. You've got blobs, you've got this, you've got that. You've got red alert statuses. Yeah, everything's 2-letter commands. It's just, what? I imagine that there's probably a real niche market for this in a similar way this is, in fact, this is how I imagine that, this is the 8-bit equivalent of Warhammer. So there's probably people, who love Warhammer, exactly. Don't get me wrong, but, I think if you said to somebody, would you rather play this text version of Warhammer or play it with your mates on a big table with the little miniatures and all that? It's a no-brainer what's going to happen. So this is just yet another game where somebody should have been stopped halfway through the development and go, stop what you're doing because nobody likes that. Same way that Glider Pilot someone should have said to him, you're making a glider game. Don't ever do that. Don't do it because don't call it Vagan Attack. Because if you look at the cover for the cassette, which we'll put on the website so you can see what I'm talking about, this portrays a game of frantic, blasting sci-fi action that is so far removed from what this game is. It's beyond belief. All of those things I've described are nothing to do with this game. This is the equivalent of. I tell you what it's like. When you go to the opticians and they have them little dots and they say, which dots are the brightest, the ones, and the red ones or the green ones? It's that. It's just one of them. Yep. It's like an eye test. It's like going for an eye test. And it's and in all fairness, at least in an eye test, you have the benefit of getting glasses at the end of it, which might make your eyesight better. Or in its interaction, this is just dull, lifeless shite, utter rubbish.
As a Trekkie game, make it no.
Oh, very good. Yeah. This is no Star Trek game. Jean-Luc Picard would smash his own eyeballs out if he saw this. He would. He'd just explode into a soliloquy of rage.
Absolutely. Not even Q would play this.
Well, even Spock would find this frustrating. He's a logical guy. He'd hate it. He'd be like, no. Find me some kind of. I'm going to travel back in time in that spaceship like we did to get the whales. I'm going back to 1985. I'm going to murder that guy. Just get rid of that game.
This game is illogical.
It would anger Spock, and that's just a lot about this game because that guy doesn't get angry about much, does he? So
Bones would just find him and kill him.
Well, he's a doctor, not a game player. That's the nerdiest Trek joke ever.
I've had more fun out of these puns than I did out of this game, put it that way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you want to move dots around, don't play this. Just go and move some dots. Draw something. Go and draw.
Yeah. Go draw.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there we go. That's our games for this section. We started out well with Baron McGuigan's World Championship Boxing. We wobbled around in Raskel. We wandered off at a wrong angle in Cylu, and then we wondered what the hell was wrong with things with Vagan Attack. Let's move on. Let's talk about films when we come back after this short break. All right, we're back. So we're going to look at film and TV, October 1985. What was going on? Not a lot in the world of TV, and I do mean that. I'm going to say one thing. There's one thing that happened that was of any interest that I could find, and this was on 3rd of October that Roland Rat, we've mentioned him before many a time, who saved Alien TVM, transferred to the BBC.
The scoundrel.
I know. Commenting on the movie says, I saved TVAM, and now I'm here to save the BBC. It's a rat.
Yes. Yeah.
Just a puppet rat.
Well, is it actually a puppet or is it a guy in a suit?
No, it's not that big.
I don't know.
To quote Excalibur, it's not that big.
I don't remember. I remember Roland Rat. I just don't. I can't. Is that a man with a hand? Is that a hand puppet essentially?
I think it's I could be wrong, but I always thought it was a Basil Brush type thing.
Really? I suppose because you never see his legs, do you? Why am I even debating? Who cares? If it ain't Sooty, it doesn't matter.
No, absolutely. I mean, Sooty is the king of all glove puppets.
Sweep. Now, come on. Now, Sooty's okay, but he is a mute. Sweep is the one.
Actually, I'd always go with Sue.
Well, you have to go with Sue, don't you? She's nice.
I do, yeah. That's just nice, yes.
But no, Sweep is my favourite hand puppet of all time. Just for that one episode where he keeps saying, "Is it an aubergine?"
And just for our listeners, he actually has a list.
So I'm actually going to put that video up somewhere on the website for those. I put the link on there just so people know what I'm talking about. But maybe you just
better than Zippy and George.
Yes, well, I don't know what exactly they are. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
They're two hand puppets. You need both hands up them.
Uncle was definitely a guy in a bear suit.
Yeah, Jeffrey was Jeffrey, but what was Zippy and George?
Well, Zippy was a cushion, I think. You know what? I don't know. George was a pink hippo. Yeah, he was a cushion.
I've never thought about what a zip. I suppose he got a zip.
Yeah, he's Zippy. He's got a zip. Yeah, weird.
Imagine so Rainbow, right? You've got Jeffrey, human. Bungle's a bear, and then you've got George, who's a hippo. Mm-hmm. And then your next optional choice sort of thing is a cushion. Why not make another animal?
Well, I suspect that was all the material they had left. Because you don't have all the others have got more working parts. Zippy's just got like them flat dead eyes, hasn't he? They don't blink or anything, do they? So he's just.
But to be fair, Zippy was the star, wasn't he? He was a Zippy.
That must have been during that phase where he had that stroke. Oh yeah, that fun couple of episodes where Zippy had a stroke and Bungle didn't know what to do.
And no one noticed because he had dead eyes.
He did have dead eyes. It's like, they tried the test on him. They used to zip his mouth up, didn't they, if he got too gobby? Like if he started getting, it's very kind of progressive. Abuse. It is really. It's quite progressive. That if you. But very strange. Anyway, it's very strange.
Yeah, the world of glove puppets in children's TV from the 80s.
Yeah, well, BBC had a habit.
They were everywhere.
BBC had loads of them, didn't it? Had the Dorkin, Gordon the Gopher, and of course Roland Rat as well. It just, they had the monopoly on hand puppets. They even had Sooty and Sweep. That was BBC as well. So but it was ITV had Emu.
The ultimate glove puppet.
The ultimate glove puppet. Yeah, I'm not even going down that road. That means talking about the pink windmill, and I ain't doing it. I ain't.
No.
Traumatised me, that programme as a child. Traumatised.
There were films released. Films released in October.
There were.
11th of October saw 2 films released. I'll just say the first one first, sort of thing. So the first one is a film called Je vous salue, Marie. Oh. And that's my French accent. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
I did a little bit of research. Je vous salue, Marie is actually called Hail Mary. It is a French erotic drama film written and directed by your favourite, Jean-Luc Godard.
Switch it off now.
It's a modern retelling of the story of a virgin birth.
Oh, of course it is.
There's
probably a scene in it where a goose gets strangled, someone falls off a ladder and breaks a cup of tea. Someone's just going to walk around with bacon over their eyes for no reason whatsoever. It's all part of the mystique of the auteur. So.
You were a big fan of French New Wave, aren't you? The Nouveau Vague.
I like Weekend, and that's the only one I like. And there's a couple of these really weird black and white ones, Vanderparts, stuff like that. They're all right.
I don't mind Gilles Agim. That was all
there's
right.
a couple, but don't get wrapped up in the whole Jean-Luc Godard's the godfather of modernist cinema, because just take your glasses off and we'll be clean, and just go and watch something else.
Yeah, indeed, sort of thing. You could have watched, instead of watching an erotic French drama on the other end of the spectrum, you could have gone and watched The Black Cauldron.
Chirpy.
Disney's
Chirpy.
The Black Cauldron. Now, this is one of the few Disney films that I have very few memories of this. Do you remember much about this? Because
I remember it being amazing animation, not much story though. I don't remember there being a grip story about it, and I remember it more because they gave away loads of little plastic figures in all of the cereals, Kellogg's cereals at the time. So.
Oh, that's good.
Good reason to remember anything, isn't it? It's merch through the cardboard, through the medium of cereal.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, it's your Happy Meal, isn't it? If you get a Happy Meal these days from McDonald's, when you can actually go back to McDonald's.
Totally forgettable characters, though. I couldn't name you one character in it.
Yeah, I looked at it sort of thing, and it looked like it looked visually like Sword in the Stone to me.
Yes,
Similar-ish to Sword in the Stone. So that kind of vibe sort of thing. But this was, Disney's so-called dark period.
Yep.
Where they had this. They had Dragon Slayer.
Black
was
Hole
a Disney film, I believe.
Was around this
Black
time.
Hole and Tron, I think, was Disney one. It sort of thing. They had this weird sort of period in the early 80s where they were trying to reinvent themselves into something different. They didn't really know. Disney had a really weird period in the early 80s, if you don't know. I mean, Disney are now this megacorp that owns half the world, them and Tencent. But back in the 80s, they wobbled.
They were struggling. They were struggling.
Really,
They were.
And it was a couple of films that came out obviously later with Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast, and then Aladdin and Lion King. That really really brought them back to the fore.
Jeffrey Katzenberg and Michael Eisner that brought Disney back from beyond. At the time when they were releasing The Black Hole, that's what people were saying Disney finances were. So that gives you an idea of where they were at, and they were in a bad way. The films were unpopular. Fox and the Hound, Black Cauldron, they're all kind of a bit glum and a bit bleak. Black Cauldron's got some really fearsome, horrific imagery in it for a kids' movie.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's just
Dragon
Slayer.
Dragon Slayer is really dark.
So I mean, they're not what you'd call, if you put them side by side with the kind of Snow White walks up to the little bird, it pops on a finger and she goes ha, and all the rest of it, and all that kind of Disney stuff. You think, oh, that's nice. And then you got Black Cauldron with a doomed death figure looming over kids that are all screaming. You're like, wow. So no, there was a sea change of management at some point in Disney that made those happen.
Yeah. It was a weird time in the early 80s sort of thing for Disney, and the Black Cauldron was kind of the last throw to go back to some kind of more traditional animation, because I don't know what they were doing around that sort of thing, but it was really, like you said, Eisner and Katzenberg, who, my understanding sort of thing is, pushed the Little Mermaid come out, Beauty and the Beast.
They went back to producing films that were more about singing and dancing and kids stuff. So they went back to more traditional tales as well. So Beauty and the Beast, which is a remake of the sort of La Belle La Bête, and they just went back to hardcore Disney princes, the values, and they're still there to this day. They never really moved from it because that was their winning formula. If you think of all the Disney movies that have princes and princesses and all the rest of it, that's good merch as well for Disney because they can sell all that stuff in dolls and all the rest of it. No one's going to go and buy a Black Cauldron, Death Cauldron for their kid and go, here's your Death Cauldron you wanted. Like similar, you're not going to buy a dead fox for someone and go, it's Fox and the Hound merch. Honestly, I don't know why it's bleeding like that. It said it wouldn't do that in the box. So there's just stuff they couldn't merchandise it, and nobody wanted to see it or buy it. So
no, I mean, I really like Dragon Slayer, but the princess in Dragon Slayer gets eaten.
Yes,
and she gets eaten, and
spoilers.
There's this. Well, tough. That's not the point of the film anyway, sort of thing. The point of the film with Dragon Slayer is, it's got a cool dragon in it, but the princess, she ends up as food for the baby dragons.
Yes. Yeah. No, well, again,
that's bleak.
I mean, it is bleak, but I kind of admire what Disney were trying to do because I think that there's a time when they felt they were being pigeonholed into making certain kinds of films, and their films always had to be kind of twee and nice, and I think that they wanted to expand out of that. So they threw a lot of money into what is now very important experimentation in film. So some advanced animation techniques came off the back of things like Tron. Some advanced camera techniques came off the back of some of their later animated films. Not necessarily Black Cauldron, but certainly in some of their real life films as opposed to the animated ones. They were trying different avenues.
Wasn't Beauty and the Beast
successfully?
Wasn't Beauty and the Beast the first animated film to incorporate computer-generated sort of that sequence in the dancing scene where there's sort of
on the dress, the folds of her dress had CG on them, and there was little elements like that.
The big camera movement around it when they're dancing and everything.
Absolutely,
sort of incorporated that. So yeah, Disney were in an interesting period, and the Black Cauldron was a step into sort of some weird direction. But 11th of October, you could have gone and seen Disney's last animated Throw of the Dice before they went back to normal, or Jean-Luc Godard's erotic Virgin Birth. If you'd have waited a week, though, which I'd advise you to have done, you could have gone and watched Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. Now, we've mentioned this briefly before, so I think we have talked a little bit about it, because I think we mentioned the Tina Turner song.
We did,
We Don't Need
yes.
Another Hero. But I love them. I really do like the Mad Max films, and I think we are kind of in agreement in this one sort of thing. And this is half a really good Mad Max film,
Yes.
and half a really weird something. I don't know what that first half is.
It's like, is it even directed by a different guy or something? Because
No,
I don't know much about the actual
George
production.
Miller.
Honestly, it's once he's had that fight with that giant and the little midget guy, whatever he is. There's two of them in there kind of fighting him. Once that's
The dwarf,
bit over,
the dwarf guy. Yeah.
Once they're over that bit, it gets into
The
the more.
Master Blaster.
Yeah, it gets into the more of the road movie type territory where these films have their strength, and that's where it's great.
But it's just that really weird secret. You get sent out into the desert, he gets picked up by those children who call him the Sky Captain, Captain
Yeah.
Rogers, and they have that really kind of crazy sort of sequence where they talk about, coming from the sky and blah, blah, blah. And then he's like, nah, I don't know what you're on about. And then it turned into let's go and destroy Bartertown.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, you get Angry Anderson before he sang the Neighbours theme. And Tina Turner with that huge wig and everything as
Big hair.
Auntie, is it Auntie her name?
Yeah, something like that.
Is
Yeah.
it? And it's got some great iconography and some really good visuals, because that's what George Miller does. George Miller's amazing. I mean, his most recent Mad Max film is astonishing. The problem with this sort of thing is it's replete with it's Mad Max through the lens of the mid-'80s.
Yes, very much so. Very much
Because
so.
you got the massive shoulder pads on Tina Turner, which is weird, and you've got this kind of bartering, trying to get back to consumerism, and all this sort of stuff going on before they kind of realise, actually, we better blow up some cars, because that's what people have come here for. And it's a good idea that they put that towards the end, because that's what you walk out the end of the cinema, thinking about. It's like, oh, great, they blew up some cars. And you kind of forget that first half till you go watch it again. It's an interesting film. It's obviously the weakest of the Mad Max films. I don't know, well, maybe the first one. I'm not sure.
No, I think the first one's a super low budget B movie almost. Schlop.
It is, yeah, and very different sort of thing. But then the first one is very weirdly sort of, like you said, low budget. Reminded me of the Peter Weir film, Cars 8 Paris, whatever it was.
Interestingly enough, this film was actually directed by two people.
Oh, is it?
Yes. So it was directed by George Miller and George Ogilvy. After the death of the producer of the first Mad Max movies, Byron Kennedy was killed in a helicopter crash while scouting locations for Beyond Thunderdome. He was a personal friend and the producing partner of George Miller, and he couldn't quite get over the shock of his death. So he hired a second director to shoot with him because he simply couldn't do it, because he wasn't in the right mindset. Which is, I think, explains a great deal about Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome.
Oh, I never knew that. There you go. Yes, I think it does something, because coming on the back of Mad Max 2, what that film did, I always equate Mad Max 2 to Mad Max as similar to Evil Dead 2 to Evil Dead.
Yeah.
In that, it ramps everything up that the first film was trying to do to a ridiculous level and takes it in a crazy direction. And this one, I admire it for trying to do something different. It would have been very easy for them just to do another, he's trapped in another place, but, try and do the whole Bartertown thing. But it just doesn't quite work.
No, it's not quite as, I don't think it's quite as grounded as it's quite as 18 rated, R rated as the first two. I think they've softened it a bit. And I think, the softening of it, even though it's creative in many ways, the softening of it makes it just feel, and then obviously it's a true return to form for Fury Road, but it just feels like it's a bit of a PG-rated Mad Max movie, and there's places where it isn't, but certainly the second half of the movie all feels very, Peter Pan-y for me. So
when he reaches the children,
yeah, and it's just a bit like. It's not a terrible film. It's just nowhere near as good as but it's going to take a lot to beat Lord Humongous for me, and he was great. So he just
wanted the gasoline.
It took a lot to beat Lord Humongous. In fact, quite a lot.
It really did.
He really wanted that gasoline. That's what I like about that. He was missing in this movie for me. He could have had his son. Not so humongous.
God. Oh, I really don't like you sometimes. I think about Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, and that ending is so good to Mad Max 2 when they make off like bandits with the gasoline,
classic.
And I'm not going to spoil it here, sort of thing. If you haven't seen it, go watch Mad Max 2. It's brilliant. And it's got such a great sucker punch of an ending. But there's that. I think it's got that great last shot of him. That's the last time I saw the Road Warrior or something.
Yeah.
And it's just him in the desert, and it's all bleak and dark. And this one starts off with like almost weird pantomime-y, the Sky Captain guy.
Yeah. Don't like it.
Just. Oh, not Sky Captain, the Gyro Captain, Gyro guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just a bit strange and tonal. It's a bit tonally all over the place as well.
I like George Miller's world. I like this world he has Mad Max in. I really like it, and especially in Fury Road. I really like that world they're in. It's kind of that neo-apocalyptic kind of
Fury Road's
space.
Amazing.
Yeah, and it's just that world they're in. Even in Mad Max, it's a lot more basic, and even in Thunderdome to some extent, it's it's still got that. It's in that space, in that world. It's all kind of a bit broken. Technology's kind of been repurposed, and it's that kind of repo world that they live in. I quite like that in all of them. It's less prevalent, obviously, in the first one, but it's certainly in the follow-ups. But it's just like I say, it's a bit like a Mad Max light. I think beyond Thunderdome.
Yeah, I think it was probably part and parcel of bringing in someone like Tina Turner, maybe some bigger stars and some bigger names, sort of thing, and a bit more, because I think probably a bit more studio money.
Yeah.
There's obviously more money in Beyond Thunderdome than there is in Mad Max 2.
Yeah.
And it's Hollywoodization. It's like I said, it's a Mad Max through the lens of 80s Hollywood, and it didn't quite work. No. Anyway, there you go. So cinema that was cinema in October. It's a load of films released next month though, so we'll be talking about them. But yeah, so you could have gone and watched The Black Cauldron, Jean-Luc Godard's Je vu Celui or George Miller's and the other guys Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. That's the cinema and TV for October 85. And we are back. That's the films. That's the TV. We've got our last set of games from this issue of Zapped and what we're looking at. First game in this final section is Spy vs. Spy 2, The Island Caper. Graham, what did you make of Spy vs. Spy 2?
First thing I noticed, actually, and I didn't realise this before, is that this is made by the people that made Balderdash.
First Star,
so this is a First Star game. So from a technical perspective, you think, wow, this is going to, if it's got that kind of pedigree, and it is very well put together. It differs from the previous Spy vs. Spy games in that this one has a scenario, which is that you need to find 3 parts of a missile, which is the XJ4.5 missile or something like that. And then you need to get all those parts and escape the island before your competitor, the enemy, and before the volcano erupts, because there's a volcano going up, so you're on a time clock. So in order to do that, you've got the range of booby traps which you can lay for your opponent, whether that opponent is a real person or whether it's the computer that you're playing against. You've got exploding coconuts, you've got snares, traps, shark attacks, you name it. It's sort of a good range of traps. You control it in the same way as you control all the games, so you have like a little trap menu, you can lay the traps in secret. They called it simul vision, this idea that you've got 2 people playing on the screen at the same time, and that you're focusing on your bit and they're focused on their bit, so there's none of this I'm watching what the other player's doing and what they are, so you can lay the traps in secret. So I suppose the question really is it an extension or better than the previous Spy vs. Spy games? Is there more to this? So there is a little bit more. Graphically, it's as good as all the others. Same sort of graphics, really. Nothing super new about it. I think the pace is a bit quicker. At least there's a bit more to it. So there is a purpose now behind it as opposed to just sort of playing it. But it still suffers from similar problems to the Spy vs. Spy games. The single player campaign, as it is here, is hard, and the single player AI is incredibly difficult to beat. So you find yourself in that same situation where if something becomes impossible, because the AI, it's not really AI in the sense that there's no intelligence to it. It just seems to know exactly where you put all your booby traps all the time. So it gets a bit tiresome, and I find it very difficult to trap the AI player. I didn't have a person to play it with, but I imagine 2-player, it's probably a whole different ball game, and it's probably a lot more fun. The same criticisms that we levelled at Spy vs. Spy 2 and Spy vs. Spy and all the other Spy vs. Spy games still apply. Great fun for 2 players, less fun with an impossible AI alternative player, but there is a little bit more to this graphically in terms of it being set on an island, and you've got sort of coconut attacks and that kind of thing. So the thematics are a bit different, and the graphics have been up to a little notch, but it's the same simul vision gameplay, and so it is a bit of but there is that race against time, so I enjoyed it, but the Spy vs. Spy games are kind of okay for half an hour. After that, for me, it gets a bit dull. What about you?
I think playing Spy vs. Spy, as we did do sort of thing, and now the sequel, Spy vs. Spy 2, I've not spent a lot of my adult life thinking about Spy vs. Spy games, I have to say, but it has reinforced a suspicion that I actually did have, which is that I just don't like the Spy vs. Spy games.
Aha.
And I think playing them again now has cemented that, and there's something about them that's just not for me.
No.
And I'm not saying they're bad games. This is a separate issue sort of thing. This is, for me, there's just something about them that doesn't work. I just don't enjoy them. Whether it's the single player nature of them, and like you said, sort of thing, the AI not being AI, just being a savant and just knowing exactly what you've done all the time. Whether it's I don't like the kind of forced humour, coconut bombs and all this sort of thing. And I have read episodes of Mad Magazine, it's obviously where they come from sort of thing, and I've never found them particularly funny. I think it's a very particular brand of humour sort of thing that just is not mine. And I've got a fairly broad sense of humour, but I've never found the Mad Magazine particularly humorous. And I think this is just an extension of that. I think technically they're quite impressive. There's some nice bits here, sort of thing, where the screens merge together, and you get that when you get on screen together. But then when that happens, sort of thing, you end up wobbling at each other with a stick, trying to hit each other to no end, and I have no idea what's going on. I usually ended up in some quicksand that sometimes I could waggle my way out of, and sometimes I couldn't. And then eventually the guy would just run off with the missile and just bog off in the submarine sort of thing. And that would be that sort of thing. And there's just something about these games that I think it just rubbed me the wrong way. They're very sort of college American, or some kind. There's some Americanness to them that just doesn't gel with me, and the whole concept of them just rubs me the wrong way, and this was no exception. I find them frustrating in the way that you've got to sort of control them, and the way you set stuff up and everything like that. And I see, the Zap game is 92%, and I can absolutely see why. I imagine with two people it's a bit of a laugh and stuff like that. And back then there's very, very little like this. They remind me of, like, in a sense, sort of thing that if the modern Lego games were sort of versus games with that kind of, split screen where the screens come together and stuff like that, with, like the Lego games play now. And in that respect, sort of thing. So technologically, sort of thing, they're sort of reminiscent of that. I don't know. I find them just quite dull and quite repetitive.
Yeah,
but
they are.
I think that may be me more than the games, but
No,
I don't know.
I agree. And apparently, Spy vs. Spy was actually a parody of the political ideologies of the Cold War, created by a Cuban expatriate and who was threatened by Fidel Castro. I didn't get any of that from this game, I have to say. I just blown people up with coconuts, but
I can see that. I not see that sort of thing, but I get the whole, black versus white, the two sides, and trying to do this, and the ridiculousness of spying and all that geopolitical politics, or whatever you want to get into, sort of thing. But I find the games just a bit too try hard.
Yeah,
I think it's the word I'm looking for.
It's devoid of political satire, that's for sure. So if you take that away, it's just meant to be kind of the fun characters and stuff. And okay, maybe, but I think I didn't have a big affinity for Spy vs. Spy. I've never really followed Mad Magazine or anything like that. So for me, it's just two fun characters where you're trying to outdo each other. But like you say, longevity, well, I think they've stretched this as far as it can possibly be stretched, I have to say.
There's a third one, isn't there? There is a third one.
Yeah, and there's the games that were made of this relatively recently, so it's not, they're still publishing Mad Magazine, and Spy vs. Spy is still in it. That said, is this game any good? It's okay. Is it better than any others? It's pretty much the same. And I found that, actually, when it's funny you mentioned that, getting stuck in the quicksand, because I found that really annoying about this game. But it doesn't have any longevity, and it's no better than any of the others. It just feels like it's just more of the same, with a sort of islandy, coconutty twist.
This is one of the games that plays well at the time, sort of thing, but hasn't stood the test of time.
No.
We use the word fiddly quite a lot in this in these reviews, sort of thing, but that's what this feels like. It feels like you're fighting against it, rather than it being, intuitive. Almost like it's trying too much. There's only so much you can do with the joystick in 8 directions. It's not for me, and it never will be. And I've come to accept that amongst myself, and I feel much more at peace.
I'm at peace with it, yes.
Yeah, and since playing this sort of thing, I've slept like a baby.
The inner peace I felt from realising that for the last 35 years I had never liked Spy vs. Spy in game format or magazine. has enabled me to sleep peacefully without the need of Zoppy clone for the last 6 weeks.
That's the power of this podcast.
It compels you.
It compels me to sleep well.
Anyway, that's by the by, of course. That's a whole separate issue. But
no. That's Spy the Spy.
Spy the Spy, yeah. The Island Caper.
Spy vs. Spy, yeah. Not for me, but, you could probably get something out of this. But no, I don't know, not me. So our next game up is, I think it's another Activision title, another Activision Sports title. This is Tour de France, as not made by Jean-Luc Godard.
Thank God.
What do we say about Tour de France? For those who don't know, Tour de France is a iconic cycle, bicycle race where lots of people in groups. You'll notice I say that in groups cycle around France. I think in modern day sort of things actually part of it happens in England. Is there? Do they come
That's
over
the
here?
Tour de Yorkshire. You're thinking of, aren't they?
Is that not part of the Tour de France?
No.
I thought it was a leg of it.
No, it's a
I thought they brought a leg of it over.
No. It's the Tour de Yorkshire.
Right, okay.
It's a different Tour de.
Tour de Yorkshire. All right. Well, okay. So the Tour de France, they basically cycle around France for whatever reason. It's a race in it. Let's pick a track and let's cycle around it. Anyway, so they do this on bikes, and this is a replication of that. This game really forces its Frenchness upon you with the French national anthem as its soundtrack, and everything feels very French. Is okay, I guess, if you're that way inclined.
It is the Tour de France.
It is the Tour de France, but it's very French. So everything about this is French. The colours do everything. So you can pick. Strange enough, it offers you a chance to do the whole thing, great, or you can pick stages. And I found picking a stage really, really hard. It gives you a circle to move. Gives you a circle to move from one section to another section, and then just continues marking sections. I'm like, no, just that one. And eventually, it let me race. So when you get to race, this is a top-down-ish 3/4 view of the track. Now, remember earlier on I said you were in a group? Yeah, not here. This is more like rally. Tour de France rally style, where you cycle the route on your own, and that's it, really. It's okay. The bike is quite well animated. The way you control it is a bit weird. You waggle from side to side to build up speed. Typical, waggle-a-thon to build up speed. And then once you build up some speed, you can coast. So that's quite nice. And you coast in direction, and you hold down the fire button, and you use left and right to steer your bike, basically turn left, turn right. So while you're coasting, you then hold down the fire button to go around corners. It's okay. Once you get used to it, it's not too bad. So you waggle a bit, and then you steer, and you waggle a bit, and 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 you steer. You get in the picture. You waggle a bit, and you steer. And you go around corners, and the graphics are all right, and the scrolling's quite smooth, but it's kind of a weird scrolling, and that it's that scrolling where you get near to the edge of the screen, and then it scrolls the next part on, which freaks you out a little bit because your speed then seems all weirdly off, and you generally tend to cycle off into the grass of which touching the grass is instant collapse. It is what it is, so it's like a Tour de France rally, really. You get to the end of a section, and it tells you how well you're doing, and then you go again. That's the game. What did I think to it? It was okay. It didn't offend me. It didn't put me off anything like that. I found it, vaguely enjoyable. Zapped gave it about 78. I could kind of see that. I'd maybe a bit lower, probably. I'm not going to go back to it. What I missed, though, was the sense of Tour de France being about a big, massive group of riders cycling, because there's none of that. So it felt more like a Tour of France, a cycling Tour of France, rather than the actual Tour de France. What did you think?
Yes, same. I thought the controls, once you got used to them, were okay. Animation was nice. It reminded me of Epic's animations, that kind of style, even though it was not Epic's. It had that kind of feel.
It did, yes.
But the game wasn't any fun of any kind. It felt laborious and laboured. I think they tried to capture the seriousness and the grandeur of the Tour de France, which is fine, but it really didn't capture any of that. It just felt like one man on a bike. No, so it was, it felt like it was a tour of the bus stops of France. No.
Tour of France, yeah.
Yeah, it was literally a Tour of France. And more to the point, it was more of, for me, it was more of a falling off at every bend Tour of France. Cycle a bit, fall off. Cycle a bit, fall off. Cycle a bit, fall off. And I was like, even when I gradually got used to the controls, it just, someone breathed near me and I'd be collapsing off that bike. I'm like, you know what? And this game, it's 2 discs. So this is a big old game. There's a lot of graphics, loads of stages. There's a lot to think about. You're going to be, you're going to have to settle in for the big game here, because you're going to be playing this for quite some time if you go for the big full Tour de France. But it just isn't fun. It just feels like it's like solo bike. You're just solo biking around. And no, I mean, maybe there's a point when you do meet other racers and stuff. I don't know. I don't know. I didn't encounter any. I just was, and it felt like I was just trying to trail a marble almost, or an object around a kind of a bit of a wiggly path. And in that instance, it felt like, those games you used to play where you had the metal spike and you had to sort of work your way around the little bendy metal track. And if you touched it, it went, meh. It was a bit like trying to control one of them. But I imagine, for the fun of doing that on one of those for 10, 15 seconds, yeah, I could play that. For sitting down, and I suspect you must be on this for hours if you're going to play the full race, because it took me about half an hour to get off the first screen. So I think you're going to be in it for the full tour. If you like cycling and you're really into it, maybe there's something for you there. I don't know. Again, I've said this before about simulations of real world things that are more interesting. Chances are somebody into the Tour de France is probably going to just go and get on a bike and cycle around a bit. I doubt that they're going to get as much from this as perhaps they could have. They felt like it had all the elements they needed to make this great, and they just didn't get to the final bit. Just put more people in it. They could have even made the graphics a little bit smaller and made it a bit, I don't know. It was just lacking of grandeur of what they were trying to do, and I think that really affected it. So, cycling alone around France was never something I wanted to play in a game anyway. So it didn't tick my boxes, I'm afraid. But there may be a Tour de France aficionado out there that goes, "Oh, you missed out on all the great stats about France." I'm like, probably did, but you know what? I read Tricolor when I was at school, and it didn't interest me then. I knew the bank was to the left, and I knew the shop to the right. That's all I needed to know. Get me out of here.
I can't help but feel whether this comes from maybe some kind of internal Activision deal sort of thing, that to see this, like you said, sort of thing, this attempt to be the simulation of the Tour de France, there's a big game and a lot's going on and a lot of attention to detail, and Barry McGuigan's boxing in the same issue, which is again is a more simulatory style version of boxing sort of thing with a lot of detail and a lot of attention to that. Whether they've approached it with the same kind of ethos, whereas one's worked and one hasn't worked quite as well.
Yeah.
It may be sort of that Activision would instead of going down the sort of quick hit sports route, we're actually trying to do something a bit different and to varying degrees of success. This isn't bad. None of it is bad. It is well made, and it is, like I said, it's nice to look at. I think you're right. It has the epicsy feel to it, but it's lacking involvement. It's lacking engagement. That you just like. It feels like a rally, but with a rally, if you're doing, in a car in a rally sport, the thrill is you against the course sort of thing, and the speed at which your car is moving this heavy thing. This is like a small sprite being scared of grass, and that doesn't really work. So it's lacking a bit in that. So there we go. It's not terrible, but it could have been better.
Yes.
Or could it? It's Tour de France. Well, it's good to put more people in it. That's what you should have done.
Anybody in it. Just people.
Yeah.
Just, there's nobody in France. Everybody left France when the Tour de France is on. If that's the game's anything to go by, there's nobody there. No applause. Nobody's cheering you on. Nothing. No one likes it. Get out. Go on Tour Yorkshire. Get out.
Tour of France. Okay, so that was Tour of France. No, Tour de France, sorry.
It's the same difference.
Same difference. Let's move on, sort of thing. We've got our second to last game for this issue, another American import. This is Ghostchaser. Go on.
This belongs in the games that have been brought across because they were on the same ship as the other games, or they were imported because they were just in a batch. The graphics on this aren't great. It's meant to be have an arcadey type vibe, but the graphics look a bit old fashioned for the C64. They look a bit like 1983, 84-y.
It's a 1984 game.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So it's a year out of date, really, and I think it shows. The idea is you got to go in the house and run around, avoiding the ghosts essentially and finding stuff. There's a decent enough atmosphere. You start off outside the house, you climb through the window, then you're in the house, and then you start to run around in the ghost. And at that point, it becomes kind of a platformery almost type vibe. So collect the blobs, avoid the ghosts. Some of the graphics are okay, but they've got kind of a basic-y look and feel vibe. The house is a bit blocky, and the graphics are a bit chunky and a bit old and a bit 1984-ish. It's got decent enough sound effects. It's a bit of an arcade feel, but it lacks any real spirit of fun. It's passable, but not great. and it's I guess it's what you'd call a distinctly average game that feels just a little bit out of its time and out of its depth. Had this been released, and it's a 1984 game, in the context of those games in 1984, this is probably okay. In the context of the games that we're now looking at, the Monty on the Runs, the Summer Games 2s, the Way of the Exploding Fists, and the things that are gradually starting to eke their way out, it looks dated already. Big blocky kind of basic colours and graphics and stuff like that. Bit slow and sluggish as well. It's not super speed. It's all right, but it's as I think Zapped gave it something in the 60%, and that's about where I would have put it. It's not brilliant, but it's not rubbish enough to say it's awful. It's just sat there in the middle, a year too late to be of any real difference to anybody who's going to buy it and play it. I think I'd have been miffed if I'd have. Is it full price? I think it is. I think I'd have been miffed if I'd have paid
$9.95.
If I'd have paid £10 for it, I would have been a bit more understandably upset. It feels like there's better $1.99 games. It probably sits in that $1.99 zone, really. But I didn't get much more out of it than that. Did you chase ghosts in there? Did you find it? Ghostbusters the 2?
I really didn't like this. I put it's a more American 1984 golf. It's that thing that's annoying me, sort of thing. It's this. We've got these games that are a year old, and it's going to port them over and sell them to the English. And I find that quite infuriating, and I don't think there's any enjoyment to be had. I didn't have any enjoyment here.
No, there wasn't any.
I put a horrible flick screen nightmare of a thing. I'm probably a bit more harsh than you.
No, I agree. I didn't get anything from it.
But away with I couldn't. The controls felt awful. The visuals. I don't like that sort of thing when they do, and it all seems to be the same color, and everything seems to be really hard to make out. And there's just these blocky things moving around, and it reminded me of it's a worse version of that bloody Rupert game.
Yes, very similar. Actually,
it's three levels and it's stairs and that kind of rubbish. But at least Rupert had some, decent visuals and nice animations. It just don't have any of that. It's quite fast. It's not slow, but it's fast in an annoying, awful way in that it don't feel. There's no finesse to it. I don't know. I just this left me very, very dispirited. Shall we say?
Yeah.
I didn't like this. I really didn't. And I'm getting, at the time probably I was probably unaware of the origins of a lot of these things, sort of thing. But looking back at them now, I'm getting more and more annoyed by these American games a year or two out of date. We're going to get another one even worse in a moment. But that are being foisted out at full price.
Yeah.
On the unsuspecting 1985 British public, which is
really
kind of
big blocky graphics, like really blocky, no finesse to them, just big chunky blocky horrible sprites, blocky. Don't like it.
I mean,
blocky.
I think it's in episode 0 we talk about Tapper.
Yeah.
I mean, Tapper's a really good example of a really good 1984 American game sort of thing with really decent visuals and nice control and really good arcade. And this just they showed that they could do decent stuff back then. We'll talk about that a bit when that game that gets released, and you'll see what we think about some of those games. But this just feels, if that had come out in that period, we'd have been like just as bad. I'd be like, no, but to release this a year on is I can't get behind it, and I feel aggrieved to have to look at it.
Yes, there's too much sort of 16 colour palette blockiness going on for my eyes. It's garish at best, awful. Yeah, and like I said, even when you get in the house, it's not great experience after that. It's just totally forgettable and out of date already, which shows you how fast things are moving on. You put this and Monty on the Run side by side, and it's just the difference is astonishing. So in every capacity, that game's way better. So, and not just in terms of its gameplay and everything else, but just visually, it's just way better. You can see that these games, how quickly it moved on, but don't release them, just keep them over there. Don't feel compelled to release all these games in the UK back then, don't do it. Save us a little bit. Keep them back, keep them for yourselves. We don't need them. So we'll make our own that are way better. We don't need your blocky monstrosities. Keep them back. You keep them to yourself.
Indeed. Away with thee.
If someone gave me that as a gift, I'd say, do you know what, I'm just going to put this away for best. That's too good to play. I'll tell you, I'm going to put that in this drawer and just seal that and lock it. No one's ever seen that. No.
Yeah, there we go. Best you can say about it. Away for best. All right, so we didn't like Ghostchaser. No. I'm not sure we're going to like this one either. Our last game for this issue. The aptly titled or not, it's Dickie's Diamonds. As I said, this is not based around the world of sport and Dickie Davis, which I was hoping it would be because, I'm quite interested in if he has any diamonds. But it's not. It's a cheap game. It's $1.99.
Not cheap enough.
The thing that appears on the title screen straight away is 1983. All right, so instantly my hackles are up, going, what is going on? So anyway, let's look at Dickie's Diamonds. What is Dickie's Diamonds? All right, so Dickie's Diamonds, you play an owl, Dickie the owl, whose diamonds have been stolen by a spider called Stephen. Okay, so at the start of every game, and then whenever you die, Stephen will walk onto the screen and slowly draw out his web. And I do mean slowly. This takes a while. He'll draw out a web with three layers to it. There's an outer layer, there's a middle layer, and there's an inner hexagon, should we say. There's a middle hexagon, and there's an outer hexagon, and they're all connected, obviously, from point to point, and he draws this sort of thing. And then you're in the top left, you are Dickie the owl sort of thing, and then you must walk around the... So there are many questions with this sort of thing, but the gameplay consists of you wandering around the web, along its strands, colouring them from white to black as you move across them. And the whole point is to colour the entire web in black and thus trap Stephen in a state, and then you get your diamond back. If Stephen walks across a part of the web that has been coloured black, he will turn it back to white. So this is Amadar-like. You kicks like it's those kind of, colour the thing to get 80-90% of it coloured in or whatever. If you get trapped in a part sort of thing, so you've gone around a point and you get trapped at a point when there's only black web around you, you can move around them, but you have to use one of your limited number of flights. So that means you fly along the web instead of walking along it. And you only have a limited number of these. And that gets you to back to the next node sort of thing, where there may be a white part you can then go walk on and you're back to normal. And that's it. That is really it. This is a single screen thing, and you walk around. If you hit Stephen the spider, you die, and then the screen resets, and Stephen comes on and draws your web again, and so on and so on and so on. Now, this game it gets old very quickly. It's not a great game, sort of thing, but it left me with many questions. So, why would an owl have diamonds?
Why would an owl be colouring in spiders' webs?
Well, exactly. Why would a spider steal them? I know these video games, and we could sort of say a lot about them, but this seems particularly obtuse. Why would an owl only have a certain number of flights? As far as I'm aware, owls can fly as much as they want.
No, they get less with the levels as well. The higher up you go, the less flights you get.
I know. Why would an owl be worried about a spider? They eat spiders, I imagine. This is a 2-year-old game. And I imagine if you played this in 1983, you'd probably get some enjoyment out of it, because at this point in 1983, things were very different. You'd look at it and you go, this is a bit of fun. It's wandering around. There's some enjoyment out here. But we're 2 years on. We're 1985. We're October. We've played Baron McGuigan. We've played Ghostbusters. We've played Summer Games 2. We've played Pit Stop 2. We've played Forbidden Fire. For God's sake. The list goes on. This is such a bad, actually, it's not a bad game, but it's a game so out of time that it's utterly redundant. And I can't see why they would even try and release this, even for £2. No. You say something good about it if you can, because I can't.
No, why would I do that? I thought it was crap. I thought it was weird. I thought it was annoying, drawing that stupid web again and again and again. Why does spiders keep diamonds is the question that I would ask shortly before I ask why would an owl bother itself with a spider that keeps diamonds. I don't know. Like you say, Why do they only have so many flights? If you get to level 8, Cecil comes out to help. That's Stephen's friend. But that's only if you've selected second spiders as an option in the beginning, which why would you do that if that makes it harder? The entire logic of this game defies reality, and therefore it just falls into the trap of stupid. And I think it started off with a very simple idea, as good games do. Draw things around in the web. If you do enough of that, the web collapses, get the diamond, next level. But I think somebody went, well, hang on a minute, it needs more challenge, you need to put this in. And it felt like, it started to feel like there's been a bit of design by committee, and all of a sudden 20 different ideas all came into this game, none of which really make any sense anyway. If they'd have just kept it to level 2 has 2 diamonds, level 3 has a bit more complicated web, level 4 has more if they'd just kept it to that kind of standard arcade paradigm of increase the complexity by adding more stuff or more difficulty that way, one screen, arcade type game, that's the kind of 1983 vibe it would have played off. Instead, they put in this ridiculous level of flights, complexity. You can only do fly so often. You can't do this. If it's white, you can only go there. Don't get surrounded by the black bit. Oh my gosh, not the black bits. Just like, it got ruined. So I think there's a gem of it, not even a gem. There's a spark of an idea in here that's been quickly wrapped up in massive amounts of shit-ridden bog paper. And for me, that's a reason for me never to play it again.
Well, it's like that when we I think we spoke about this in episode 1. What was that web dimension?
Yeah,
remember
the
musical
made no
notes
sense.
one.
Yeah, exactly.
The game with the musical notes, which is again sort of thing. You're moving around a web, colouring it in for no reason. That these games are okay if you play something like Volfight or you play something like Kicks. Or you play something like Amadar, there's a pleasure to be had in these kind of covering the thing in a certain sense because, and like you said, increase it in complexity and challenge and keep the pace up. I also found it really awkward. I don't know whether it was my controller or the way it was playing it sort of thing, but did you find it awkward as well to find the angles to go up along this? Because it's a hexagon, which doesn't quite match to 8 directions on a joystick. I don't know if they were trying. I was like, for God's sake! Quite often I would just I would start flying down an angle I didn't push. I was like, I've watched use one of my flights.
Yeah, exactly. And it suffered from the size of the pixels on a Commodore 64. I mean, when they drew that web, you draw it when your pixels are essentially 2 across, like they were double width, medium res pixel. That's a playoff, so you get more colours, which they didn't seem to have in this game anyway. But
no, because the sprites were single colour.
That everything looks a bit elongated, so everything's a bit sort of squat and wide, which is why the web's a bit squat and wide. But that doesn't match the joystick, which isn't. So, but you're controlling an owl in a spider web. I mean, I'm worried about the scale of these things. How big is that spider, or how small is that owl?
That's what I mean.
No
wonder it's more questions.
And how big are the diamonds? I mean, is this a money spider and that's an owl? If it is, then that's got to be it doesn't make any sense. And then why should it? The games don't have to make sense in any way capacity. Don't get me wrong, but this one is not just doesn't make sense. It's also just stupid. No, I'd rather not. I'm going to go back to Monty on the Run. You're competing with that now. You've got it is a strong benchmark here. Where it's Blood and Fist, summer games, like you've already said, those are the games that exist in this timeline now, and you're going to put this against them. You cash grabbing crazies. Like I said about the previous game, just keep them back. Keep them to yourself. Don't have to release. Just because you've made a game, you don't have to release it. Just get your mates to play it. If that's what it takes to make you feel good about yourself, get them to play it. Just bring them round. I've made this game where owls are attacking spiders for diamonds, and they go, you know what? It's great. Never release it though. Just keep it to yourself. Keep it for best. Keep it for best. Yeah, keep it in the same drawer as Ghostchaser. That drawer is going to get full very quickly. Just keep it for best. With all the aunts and uncles I had sort of thing buying me these games, my drawers were packed with these crap games. They were like, do you ever play that game? Well, let me show you my drawer. What is it, $1.99 this? So it's definitely would it pacify you if you've got one of those kids, you've taken them shopping, they've been dragging them around, you've had to buy shoes, you've had to, and they're screaming and kicking off, and it's like, would you buy something for $1.99 or would you just buy them? Back then it was Star Wars figures or something like that, maybe for that kids that would appeal to games of this age. But I think if you bought this for £2, you took it home, you booted it up, you played it, you'd get you would play it because obviously what you had. Yeah. And you'd probably play it a few times, but I think deep down, internally, you'd be crying. You would. Not only that, if you bought this as a present for someone, not only would you be crying, you'd be thinking to yourself, if you bought this for your child, you're thinking, how much is the counselling going to cost me in about 10 years' time when they realise that they were traumatised by a game with either a giant owl or a giant spider or a really microscopic owl? Yeah, they're going to be sat there going, it doesn't make any sense, and that could scar someone for life. Probably has. Yeah, you'd be sat there thinking, am I a bad parent? Yeah. And you would. You are. Would. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. If you bought this for your child. Yeah. If you're looking across your games shelf and there's a lot of Mastertronic games, and we all know we play Mastertronic Roulette, and if there's more of the bad ones than the good ones, which is the roulette, just all I'm saying is just keep a close eye on them, because as the teenagers, they could go wild, could go completely off the rails. Watch Burke. That's it. Keep a close eye on it. Yeah, watch him. No, Clark. Watch Clark. Watch Clark and watch him close. Watch him close. That's it. I'm all right now. How long are you alone with that game? No, you cannot come out of the drawer. you horrible thing from space. Anyway, don't play Dickie's Diamonds, for God's sake. You may turn full. You'll need counselling. That's what you'll need. Yeah, right. There we go. That's our games. We'll round them up in a bit and tell you what we thought of them and pick our highlights from this issue. But right now, we're going to move straight on into Crapverts. We've got a few more to look at. We looked at a couple last episode. We looked at Schizophrenia and the Inexplicable Souls of Darkon.
And now we go to, what's this called? Sorderon. Oh, I can't remember. What is this? Sorderon Shadow. This is a Beyond title. Challenging software. So what the hell? So Sorderon Shadow, I think, was a Spectrum game. It is a Lords of Midnight style thing. And you know that because across the top, under the Beyond logo, it says, warning, this game will keep you up after midnight. See what they did there? You see how subtle this was?
Very subtle.
Beyond's first landscaping and text adventure. Wow. 4,100 locations and more than 32,000 screen views. Because, of course, Lords of Midnight had 32,000. So this has to have more.
Dear.
We've got game specifications. I'm avoiding the actual main point of this advert.
Yes.
We'll get to that in a minute. Game specifications, character graphics, Denton designs, landscaping after Mike Singleton's Lords of Midnight. I don't even know what they're trying to say here. Characters have artificial intelligence. Then there's runs on Spectrum and Spectrum Plus. Okay, full text editor, 3-sentence command recall. However, the main image is it an orc?
It's an amalgamation of several things. That is a vampiric, skull-horned, ponytailed demon from another world.
With eyebrows that need severe plucking.
Yes, it's a skull it's got eyes and eyebrows on a skull with no nose, horns coming out of its forehead.
And a ponytail.
No lips, of course. Well, bottom lip. It's got some kind of bottom lip or jawline. And a ponytail, really, but it's a top knot more than a ponytail.
Actually, yeah, it's a top knot, isn't it? Yeah, sorry.
So, yeah, but no other hair to speak of anywhere. So I'm still mesmerised. Well, apart from its eyebrows, I guess. Or maybe those horns are its eyebrows. It's just, it's got really long, thin, waxed horn brows. Either way.
Do you think it's Sorderon? I don't know. What is it? It's scary.
Well, no, because there's no image there of Sorderon's shadow, so I guess maybe that's his shadow. That's that. I don't know what that thing is. I don't know what relevance it has.
He just follows him around.
I suspect that design kept the artist up till after midnight for many years. That he's thinking about that, going, I should never have given that drawing because they've used it in advert. It's going to haunt me for the rest of my life.
I mean, it has some kind of. It's very. I don't like the fact that its eyes are kind of. Not
sunken.
It's all kind of horribly wrong. I mean, don't get me wrong, sort of thing. It's better than I could draw. So I appreciate there is some artistic technique here, sort of thing, but it's just I don't get the whole advert. I just don't get it.
Just think about what that creature would look like if it actually had skin and a nose and features where those... Anyway, don't even they're thinking about. And of course, just an aside, the Beyond Challenge software, that looks suspiciously like a pillow embossed to me, and which means that the graphic designer needs to be put in a tank of cold water and just slowly drowned.
You and your pillow embossed hatred.
Well, it's meant to be kind of a metal bevel effect, but to me that looks suspiciously like a grubby pillow emboss, and, I don't like that blatant disregard for, all the rules of graphic design in that one advert. That could keep you, no wonder it keeps you up after midnight, keep you up for the rest of your life if you created that monstrosity. How many fonts and things can you throw at a page, and colours? Why do that, And I guess it's important for them to have all this braggart kind of, it's got a full text editor and it's got 750 word vocabulary. I'm guessing that the Singleton game, Lords of Midnight, has a 749 word vocabulary and a 2-word text edit. It's all very one-upmanshipy, and it doesn't sell it to me, I'm afraid. I'm not even sure, really, what that doesn't say much about anything, does it? It's just lots of guff and talk and not much substance.
You know what it's going to be? It's going to be that. It's going to be Lords of Midnight, but with different graphics, and that's it. It's just some people seeing that and going, well, we want one of them.
Or as I prefer to call it, the Boards of Midnight.
Anyway, let's move on from Sporderon Shadow to... We've spoken about him earlier and his love for budgies.
And here he is.
And he's back. He is. He's Jeff Cape's Strongman. Now, if we talk about bevel, good lord, Strongman has been over beveled.
Oh, that's the chisel. That's a chisel effect.
I don't know where to start on this one because there's so much. So, right, let's... Okay, the first thing I do want to notice here, sort of thing, is that this is actually just stating Jeff Cape's Strongman, isn't it? Because there's no apostrophe in Capes.
Yes.
So it's not his Strongman.
No, he is a Strongman.
This is just Jeff Cape's Strongman.
Yeah, exactly that, yeah. So
this is a statement of fact that Jeff Cape's Strongman.
Yeah, I'm willing to bet that's on his business card.
Along with that picture.
That picture definitely is.
So the diagram is our Jeff. So Jeff Capes was a bit of a British He was a British shot putter, wasn't he? He was a shot putter
originally, then he was
Britain's
strongest man.
And then he became Jeff Cape's strongman.
Yeah, he's Britain's strongest man, yeah. Well, it tells you there that he was an Olympic shot putter, a world and European strongman, and world Highland Games champion.
That's true, and I hope that he actually did change his name by default to Jeff Cape Strongman. He's got really hairy arms, just along one bit, and a bit of a hairy chest, but he's clearly struggling to bend a bar around his neck. So this illustration shows our Jeff, bit of sweat and sporting some feathers, I think. I don't know what the white things are behind him.
I think that's meant to be like sort of strain.
It's impact strain, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not good. Because none of this fits.
No.
Because the Jeff Capes at the top is in a hexagonal border.
It's actually trapped in the Hornby logo. So the Jeff Capes, they've taken out the word Hornby and put Jeff Capes in it.
Although Hornby Strongman would be a more interesting game.
Hornby's strongest man. It's just a very localised game to the workers of the Hornby model train factory, where they make them just compete in really difficult events for no real purpose, just to find out which one of you is the strongest.
Then we've got the word strongman around Jeff's
steel.
Head. In steel, with a massive chisel
bevel steel.
Bevel.
There it is. Look at that.
It's like somebody's fingers slipped on the slider. Then we've got this illustration of Jeff, endorsed by Jeff Capes. I should hope so. You can do the truck pull or tug of war, car rolling, barrel loading, fairground bell, log chopping, and wrestling.
Fairground bell seems a bit of an odd one. What do they do in that? Just ring a really big bell.
Yeah. But if you look at the bottom, what this game promises is skill, strategy, and timing, not just another joystick bash.
Well, that sounds like that's a quote directly from Jeff himself. When you make this game, I don't want any more of that bloody strategy. I want skill, strategy, timing. I don't want any more of that joystick bashing.
Oh God, this is so weird. That strongman logo is, I get it. It's iron, isn't it? It's supposed to be steel.
Yeah, because he famously used to bend bars around his neck, didn't he?
I know he used to bend the bars sort of thing, but the picture that they could have picked a better picture.
Yeah, I think it's.
It doesn't look very strong. He looks like he's really weak and trembling.
Anatomically, it's all there. I'm still not 100% sure about his neckline because it looks kind of weird. Because it seems to be like he's got some kind of neck wing. I'm not sure what's going on there.
Jeff Cape's neck wing.
So
I've heard the game. I played.
The shoulders and the arms seem proportionate, short, but proportionate. His right hand and his left hand look enormous and strong. So no wonder he's, and he's really bending that bar. He's a strong man. He is a strong man, and it's got, he's obviously got beads of sweat trickling over his face, he's all bearded and sweaty and impact. And okay, I don't remember what Jeff Capes looked like, but he was
like that.
I have
just
heard
a big beardy man.
Believe it or not, I have heard from somebody whose pub he goes in. This is no word of a lie. That I'm pretty sure he's still alive, but either way, I'd heard from a person I know owns a pub that he goes in who said he is genuinely one of the most lovely men on earth. He's absolutely a lovely guy.
Yeah, I imagine he is.
I suspect that, and he was generally one of those real, at the time in the 80s, he was a super celeb, wasn't he? He was on all the kids' shows and all of that. I bet he's a really kind-hearted guy. I don't know how he would feel about that image, being a kind-hearted guy, because it kind of portrays him, it's kind of quite an aggressive image of him, struggling. I imagine that's either the face that you pull when you're trying to bend a metal bar, or you've had a particularly hot chili curry and you're doing the world's most powerful dump, and you're just getting rid of that all that white splash that around him. That's the water evaporating as his lava turds are hitting that bowl. Total blowout. I'm not a strongest man, but I've done that face, that sweaty beaded face. I've done that exact expression. I can sympathise with that expression. I've not ever gone car rolling or bell ringing or log chopping, but log chopping, not that
or
version.
Neck winging.
Well, not that version of log chopping, but yes, and it's a game I don't remember playing it. But is this the one that had did it have a Rob Hubbard soundtrack? Jeff Cape Strongman?
Yeah, it did. I think. Yeah, we are. This will come up. I'm pretty sure this is reviewed, so we will be looking at this.
Yeah, we will end up looking at it. So it's a future thing.
We will see if there is some skill, strategy, and timing.
Let's nick the Hornby logo. Let's just get a massive, let's put a grey beveled graphic together for Strongman because it's steel and strong and it looks like it. The only time you can ever get away with it is in the 80s for this stuff, because nowadays if you created that kind of beveled graphic on Photoshop, as I've said before, it just self-deletes and then removes itself from your computer for the rest of the time. You can't even find it. If you Google it, it just says no more. So yeah, but I bet I'm actually quite looking forward to playing that. I don't remember ever really getting into it. So
we'll see.
We'll see. Well, I might be revising my statement.
This patchy arm hair worries me.
It's more like stubble, isn't it? You could strike matches on that. He probably does. I bet he does. Well, not if he's doing a Megaturd. Don't strike a match because.
What would they be back then? Maybe Swan Vesta.
And he's also quite red-faced, isn't he? Which I imagine bending a steel bar around your back of your neck and over your neck wings is probably quite a sweaty affair, actually. But there you go.
Bar
He does not look like he's having a good time.
No, he doesn't. Yeah. He really doesn't. Anyway, Jeff Cape Strongman. Our last Crapvert. God. Okay, I think this is called the Devil's Crown, but it actually says THC.
What on earth is that?
So this is something called the Devil's Crown, which actually looks like what Jeff Capes is producing.
He's got a pain in his devil's crown, all right.
So, God, what the hell? The most amazing arcade adventure to be released for the Amstrad. Oh, they were hard up on the Amstrad, weren't they? We've looked at Spectrum and C64 stuff, but we're now getting into Amstrad stuff. So the Devil's Crown. Okay, so where do I start? There's the words "the Devil's Crown" in some big jolly lettering across the top, but it actually says the spot from the E is missing, so it actually looks like THC Devil's Crown. There's no apostrophe to be seen, so I don't know what it actually means. The W in the crown is a crown, a sort of quite realistic one, but for no reason. And beneath that, okay, I don't know what you might think when you hear the name the Devil's Crown. Right, fair enough. You might think, okay, maybe, whatever. Probably what you're not thinking, though, is a pirate ship being menaced by a giant devil.
Yeah, he's picking it up.
In the ocean. He's picking it up with his pointy tail pointing at it, and there's people falling off.
There is?
Remember that scene in Pirates of the Caribbean where they get menaced by the giant squid? It's kind of like that, except with the devil. But a really kind of a bit slightly camp and effeminate. It's actually quite sort of 40s, 50s, 30s, 40s, 50s style, devil style. It doesn't look, it looks weird. To be fair, it looks like a man in an outfit.
Well, it looks like a Halloween costume, kind of a.
Yes, that's what I mean. Yeah, it actually looks like Ming the Merciless because he's got the pointy ears in a devil's outfit, complete with. It would say on the advert, includes horny tail. Just
speaking of horns, is it me or are those horns in the wrong place on his head? Because they look like they go front to back, not side to side. So it just looks like he's got a front horn and a back horn, whereas the devil would probably have a side horn, a left horn, and a right horn. He's got port and aft horns. He's got front, he's all wrong. He's all wrong.
It is all wrong, sort of thing, because I'm not quite sure where that cape is coming from as well.
No, and you notice he's got no kind of genitalia, so he's in that by rights his big devil cock and balls would be dangling in that water, but there's none to be seen. Not that I'm advocating that, but he has got a tail coming out of his leg, so who knows?
But it's so bad, again, it's a recognisable pirate ship. It's a recognisable sort of 1930s style devil in an outfit. But the whole menagerie of nonsense that's going on. And above the devil's head is that crown that's placed quite provocatively. I have no idea what the hell this game is.
I'll bet that this game is you got to wander around the decks of a pirate ship, picking stuff up and dropping stuff off. It's got that written all over it. Do you see what it says in the small yellow print on there? Soon to be released, The Adventures of Bond, Basildon Bond, starring Ross Abbott.
Imagine if this picture sort of thing replaced the devil with Russ Abbott.
They should have done that.
So it's just
I really want to see that game, a Basildon Bond Russ Abbott game. I bet it's well atmospheric.
I think there was one. I seem to remember that kind of thing. I mean, we've had a Super Grand game, and as we found out today, there's an Auf Wiedersehen pet game.
So, in fact, we must track these down. And Russ Abbott, if he's in any game, because he basically made a career out of impersonating Tommy Cooper in a Superman outfit, really. Which is weird, isn't it? Anyway, that's a whole separate thing.
Was it Blunderman?
It was Cooperman.
Cooperman, that was it.
It was Cooperman. But he also did Basildon Bond and a number of other wacky characters. That Russ Abbott, it was hilarious.
When I associate like big devil god type things with the sea, I instantly go to Poseidon. I've never associated the devil with the ocean.
No. And also, I'm wondering now, looking at that, how long that devil's legs are, because if he stood up in the ocean, and that ocean's deep, his legs must be like 3 miles long. No wonder he's terrifying. So it's all proportionally wrong and weird. And why is the devil in the sea? Why is he picking up a pirate ship? Why is the pirate ship got a pink flag instead of a black flag and skull and crossbones? Why is the devil's crown written in some kind of weird multicolour rainbow font? Why is there the world's largest drop shadow on it all? Why have they put a stroke and a drop shadow on the same graphic? Why have they broken all the rules? Why stop breaking the rules? They've even got a shadow on the crown. It's just stop putting shadow on it. There's so much wrong with it that the only thing you can say, and they've even got the classic, cut out the probe software from something else, stick it on with a bit of copied X. Rubbish. Yep. Just classic crapvert. And the thing is, it's not even out in the shops, that game. You have to actually get it from Mitcham Road, London. Get it from his house, from Probe Software. If you went round there, it's just some guy's house. It's like, I'll tell you a copy.
And they do welcome dealers.
Home of the Devil's Crown.
There you go. That's our Crapverts. Jeff Capes, Border and Shadow, and the Devil's Crown. Again, all these will be on the website for you to enjoy. Go have a look at them. Go to zapped.com and then go to Crapverts to have a look at them. Awful. All right, let's round up. What was going on in the charts this month? There's probably not much change from last month, actually. The top 30, top 10, I'm not going to go through all these, but the top 10 Commodore games, we had Graham Gooch's Test Cricket. At least it's not, better than Ian Botham's.
Yeah, it did win that battle.
International Tennis.
Yeah, we like that.
Yeah, Frank Goes to Hollywood.
Yeah,
great. We really like that. Kickstart. Good.
Always good.
Pit Stop 2.
Yep.
Good. Action Biker. Yeah. Soft Aid. Good
Still
cause.
There. Yeah, good cause.
Elite.
Get out the chart, Elite. Go now.
Go away with you to Dizzo.
Get out. Go and trade between Dizzo and Lave. Get out of the chart.
Hypersports at number 2.
Yeah, you can see that.
Yeah, it's really good. And number 1, I think, still is Way of the Exploding Fist.
Of course.
And I think going to take some moving. Things I don't see in there. What we got else? Some of the stuff that are in the Dam Busters still at number 11. View to a Kill at 13.
Did you know that's horrifying?
That five-a-side game we looked at last week is at 17.
By Annie Rogg, yeah.
Last time. Finest Keeper Spy Hunters in there. More,
Tour de France.
Year-old Dross. Tour de France in at 23. And Toon, Cauldron, Jet Set Willy 2. That's bad. Mr. Do. Anyway, there you go. There's the chart. So, Way to Explain If it's still riding high. What we got coming up next issue, in issue 7, this is a bit of a barnstormer, really. We've got Paradroid, which will be interesting. We've got Winter Games. Imagine this.
This is going to be an epic, isn't it?
Games
Wizardry Paradroid. In there, goodness.
Wizardry's in there. We've got... Now, this confused me, actually, because we've got World Cup 2 and World Cup Soccer. Which is kind of confusing because this is November 1985 and the World Cup is not until summer of 1986.
It's future-proof.
Because I know it's not 1984 because that's when the Olympics were. So I know it's 1986. I think it was Mexico 1986. So we've got that. William Wobbler. I remember that. Steve Davis' Snooker. That should be fun.
Karateka.
Karateka's in there. Hunter Patrol.
Wow, yeah.
I seem to remember that being okay.
Yeah, good.
Axis Assassin.
That's another good one. Karateka, yeah. God, there's some good ones in there. Wow.
Hacker, which is an interesting game. Robin of Sherwood as well, and Saberwolf. So that's a kind of a playoff, actually. We'll have a look at both of them together, probably, because they're quite similar-ish games. Then there's Nonsense. There's something called Sorcerer Attack, Star Cross. Just a game called Stealth.
Wizard's Lair, I seem to remember that being good.
Yeah, Wizard's Lair was like the Attic Attack type game, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is,
Yeah, so some decent stuff to look forward to. Also, Doughboy. I'm not sure about Crusade in Europe or Castles of Dr. Creep.
Why does the Rats sound like it's not going to be very good? Is that based on that?
No, the Rats is... we won't be looking at the Rats. I've not mentioned that.
Oh, is that an adventure, is it?
It's a text adventure based on the James Herbert book.
No, we don't do that. Goodness me. I thought if it was that.
Yeah, it is. It is indeed that.
Goodness me.
I remember it. I think it's one of those with some visuals in as well.
Little computer people in there as well.
It does say Activision's Little Computer People kit, yes. Another gold medal. So we've got 2 gold medals. Interesting to look at Little Computer People. I'm not sure what we'll actually make of that. Maybe a brief
dip, because it's not really, I don't know. We'll have to think about what we do about that one.
Yeah, we'll have a think. We may
It's a human simulator.
Yeah, you just watch someone in a house.
Yeah, which I do regularly from my back bedroom, but let's not talk about that.
You were wrong to buy that telescope. I told you at the time. Right, okay. He lives across the road from me. That's why I told him not to buy it.
It's very true. He always pulls the curtains closed, but not always fully.
No, on purpose. On that note, we will leave you. We've been Zapped to the Past. I've been Adrian Mills.
I've been Graham Ruddings.
And we look forward to talking to you next time about Commodore 64 games. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you for listening to the Zapped to the Past podcast. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the world of Commodore 64 games, as well as the music, sights, sounds and news from around the 1980s, driven, of course, by the issue of Zapped 64 magazine published at the time. We will be back next week with another podcast, so do please join us. Until then, please head over to zappedtothepast.com to sign up to our email list, as well as check out all the links and resources in the show notes. You will also find us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram under Zapped to the Past. The Zapped to the Past podcast is written and produced by Adrian Mills and Graham Ruddings and recorded at Flaky Bits 2.0 Studio. All opinions expressed are those of the writers, and while we indeed love Zapped 64 magazine, the Zapped to the Past podcast is not affiliated with it in any way. Stay safe and see you next time.